So, why do I have to pick one language? I have a little rant. I see people saying things like, oh, this language took that language's place, or this language is bad, that is good. All of you guys, calm down, okay? The reason I'm saying this is, say for me, for example, at this point in life, I identify with more than 3 languages. And I feel like all of them are a part of my heritage, okay? Because Punjabi, I live in Punjab, and my forefathers, they lived in Punjab. Urdu, because all of our forefathers have also been speaking and reading Urdu for a couple of centuries by now. And also English, because I don't like the fact that we were colonized. But we were, weren't we? So English is a part of our history. And now by a stretch, this is something we don't speak a lot in Pakistan these days. But technically, Farsi has been a part of our heritage for like hundreds of years. So why do I have to pick one language? Why can't I pick all 3 of them, learn all 3 of them, and then I have access to vast amounts of literature, culture, history, and entertainment? I mean, why should I miss out? Why do I need to pick one language? The whole point of these videos is to kind of understand the different languages, the different cultures, look at their beauty, embrace the difference, and kind of come together. It's not to divide. It's kind of to understand the struggles that each identity has gone through and learn to appreciate the other person's culture. Okay, so I'm done with the rant and now we can go on with the video. So now let's talk about the Punjabi language in Punjab. Now, when I say in Punjab, the thing is that Punjab, the word literally translates to 5 rivers. Obviously, that word kind of hints at the geographical area of Punjab, right? But historically, the boundaries of the state of Punjab have never been static. They've always been changing. Throughout different empires in history, the area of Punjab, which has mostly been an administrative unit, has been described with different borders. For example, the Mughal Empire in the 16th century kind of considered Punjab a smaller area. In their view, it was kind of nestled between the Indus and the Satluj. And we see terms emerging in Mughal documents kind of calling it Sarkar-e-Punjab, meaning the government of Punjab, or Suba-e-Punjab, which is the province of Punjab. Now, after the Mughals, the majority area of Punjab kind of came under the Sikh Empire. And a lot of historians agree that the kingdom of Lahore that was kind of formed under Ranjit Singh does not map very comfortably onto what we consider Punjab today. Because after 1809, it stopped including areas that were south of the Satluj River and additionally included territories, like Jammu and Kashmir and more towards Hindu Kush, all of which do not fall into what geographically is described as Punjab. Now then come the British, right? And in their time, the concept of Punjab kind of ballooned, it kind of expanded to a much larger territory. It stretched all the way from the Himalayas down to Delhi. It also had parts of present-day Haryana and Himachal Pradesh. So you see what I mean when I say that the boundaries of Punjab historically have been changing. And it's within all of these boundaries that when we look at the history of Punjab, we need to know that these boundaries were fluent and not static, because we're going to be talking about what became of Punjabi through each of these different empires and how it was treated. So we need to know that in each of the empires, there was an administrative unit called Punjab, but every time the map was different, right? It had different areas. So keep that in mind when we go through the rest of the video. Now let's go back to the very beginning, the birth of the Punjabi language. Now here is where we have a couple of different opinions because historians and linguists have different schools of thought. Now most historians believe that Punjabi comes from a kind of language called Apabhramsa, but they can't quite agree on which Apabhramsa it is that Punjabi is coming from. Then there are some historians that say that all Indian languages have basically stemmed from Sanskrit, with Apabhramsa and Prakrit, which is another language, being like stepping stones between the Punjabi language and Sanskrit. They're like the in-between languages. And this group of historians basically call Sanskrit the mother of all languages. Then there are other historians who use Jain and non-Brahmin sources to trace Punjabi. And they argue that the Prakrit language is actually older than Sanskrit, and that Prakrit and Apabhramsa are both very poetic languages as compared to Sanskrit. In terms of poetry, Punjabi is also very poetic. Now, another less popular theory suggests that Punjabi isn't related to Sanskrit at all and is a completely separate and native language. And finally, some historians believe that modern Punjabi is a mix of the original Punjabi language mixed with Arabic and Persian and Islamic influences. Now, I'm telling you all of these different schools of thoughts because there's no unanimity among the scholars that which exactly is the right path, right? There's no one answer. A lot of different scholars are arguing a lot of different theories. But one thing to note is that Punjabi is a very, very old and ancient language, and it has been existing in this region for a while. Even if it is in the form of Apabhramsas or Prakrit, they were a variation of the Punjabi language. The modern day Punjabi is definitely different than those, but it is a derivation of those languages. So when people say that it's a modern language, it came with Sikhism, and those are misconceptions. That's not true. Now, it's around the 1400s that scholars place the first poetic treatise, as they call it, to be written in Punjabi language. Unfortunately, the names of the poets who wrote these things have not been preserved, but that's one of the first writing samples that we have of Punjabi. There's also some debate regarding when exactly was Punjabi poetry written for the first time. Now, scholars talk about some poetry written by a person called Sheikh Farid, and they make a very clear connection from the Multani dialect to modern day Punjabi of that poetry. And that poetry is actually included in the Adi Granth, which is a holy book of Sikhism. But this is the thing. There is some disagreement as to who exactly was this Sheikh Farid, because in history there are very two famous Sheikh Farid. Some scholars believe that these poems are written by Fariduddin Ganj Shakar, who is a Sufi saint, an Islamic Sufi saint, who lived from the time period 1173 to 1265. And if this was written by him, then the earliest sources of Punjabi that we have are actually those verses, right? Now, others believe that there's another person called Farid Sani. Sani means second itself. He's also a spiritual leader, and we don't know the exact dates during which he lived, but the estimated dates are somewhere between 1450s to 1575. The poems themselves actually also offer proof of the time period that they're written in, because they talk about the influence of a religious movement called Vaishnava Bhakti, which came to Punjab around the middle of the 15th century. That is the 1400s. The poetry also shows influence from another very famous poet called Kabir, who lived from 1398 to 1520, basically after Fariduddin Ganj Shakar. So a lot of historians claim that the first poetic verses written in Punjabi came from Farid Sani, and they were written after 1450s. Now, after the 1450s, moving a bit forward into the 1600s, that's where we have a really nice bloom of the Punjabi language, and the most famous early prose works in Punjabi were the Janam Sakhis. These are special stories which tell about the life and teachings of Guru Nanak Dev, the founder of Sikhism. Now, Guru Nanak lived from 1469 to 1539, and these stories are probably written few years after his passing. And it was during this time that Sikhism flourished, and also the language of Punjabi kind of flourished. There's a lot of work done to promote the Punjabi language during this time. While the Janam Sakhis and other religious scriptures were enjoyed by Sikhs, there was another kind of genre that was emerging during this time, which were folk tales and kissa stories, epic stories, which kind of were popularized throughout the region. Now, this was me basically touching upon the origins of the Punjabi language. Obviously, if you want to go deeper into learning all the nitty-gritties, there are some sources in my description box that you can have a look at, and obviously you can do your own research. But let's look at how the language of Punjabi was treated through all the different empires that I mentioned earlier on. And we're talking before the partition of India and Pakistan happened, okay? We're talking about the Mughals, the Sikh Empire, and the British. We're going to start out with the Mughal Empire, and all of this happened before the year 1799, because after that, different states emerged. So our cutoff date for the Mughal Empire is 1799. Now, throughout the Mughal Empire, Punjabi in Punjab was not an official language, but it was used informally, and it was used quite frequently. Persian was actually the language of the court, of the government, and of all the intellectual institutes. Literacy rates in Punjab were actually quite high because there were a lot of schools teaching in different languages like Arabic and Persian. But as I mentioned, Punjabi still remained an informal language and was not kind of patronized by the state. Then comes Ranjit Singh's empire, the Sikh Empire. Now, one would think that with the advent of the Sikh Empire, Punjabi would be given more height, right? But turns out that the state language remains the same, Persian. However, Ranjit Singh did patronize the language of Punjabi because that means that he basically put a lot of money into its development. During his time, the schools in the region of Punjab were quite interesting because you see that there are different names for different types of schools, and all of those schools have different teaching languages. The maktabs, educated in Persian, madrasas in Arabic, pathshalas in Sanskrit, Gurmukhi schools taught Punjabi written in the Gurmukhi script. Then there were Mahajani schools, which were basically like commercial schools because they taught you trading and things in numbers and all that. And those used the Sarafi script. There was a lot of emphasis on learning different languages during the Sikh Empire in Punjab. But even then, Punjabi never had official status. It was mostly voluntary, and it was the Sikh students that would enroll in the Gurmukhi schools to kind of learn Punjabi to be able to read their holy scriptures. Then came the British Raj. The British initially kept Persian on as the official language because that just was easier. Everybody was trained in the language, there were already systems and administrative systems in place, and it was just easy to make it running, right? But later, the British actually took a decision to shift away from Persian and make Urdu the official language. And that was because Urdu was more commonly used in the north of India, and a lot of British officials and their munshis were already trained in the language, and they found that easier. This decision wasn't very popular though, and especially in the province of Punjab, and there are a lot of back and forth. You can see there are letters and there are different documents showing even British officials in Punjab arguing back to their headquarters that Urdu isn't recognized in Punjab that easily, that Punjabi needs to be in an official capacity somehow because the soldiers in Punjab only speak Punjabi. And then there are other letters that we find where there are commissioners arguing that in the Multan side, Urdu is widely unknown. So it's very difficult to shift the entire administration onto a language that nobody knows. They were even open to considering Persian as the official language in Punjab because Persian was more widely known because of the Mughals, right? Because of Ranjit Singh. Persian was kind of in use within the entire region for a couple of centuries now. So suddenly, shifting to Urdu was a big shift and a very problematic one for Punjab. The British basically took no heed of what their commissioners were saying, and Urdu did become the official language of the administration, of the schools, of the army, and they even brought in trained munshis from the north of India into Punjab to kind of help the spread of the Urdu language. Now, within the British Raj, now we have to remember that Punjab was kind of taken over by the British from the Sikhs, right? It wasn't the Mughals who were ruling Punjab at that time. It was a Sikh Empire. And it's a very fascinating story where they actually take it from a child Maharaja. And I've actually made an entire series on that, and I'll link it in the description at the end of the video if you're interested. And they kind of do it in the traditional, typical British style of trickery and breaking treaties. So obviously, now that the Sikh Empire is gone and they have control of Punjab, now the British view the Gurmukhi script, which is associated with the Sikh scriptures, as kind of a threat. And since they're afraid of the Sikhs standing up or a rebellion or something, they're highly prejudiced against the Gurmukhi script and the Punjabi language because that's now seen as a symbol of Sikhism and maybe of resistance that the British might be facing. And this marginalization of Punjabi, which began at that point, kind of continued with the Hindi-Urdu controversy that began some years later, that began in the 1860s and lasted till 1947. Because of the Hindi-Urdu controversy and the whole notion of the two nation states and everything, and nationalism, that the Muslims in India and in Punjab basically started identifying more with the Urdu language, because then it stood for something bigger than just their own identity. And similarly, the Hindus in Punjab would identify with Hindi language. And because of the overall attitude of the British during that time, which was highly prejudiced towards Punjabi kind of took a back step. So overall, we see that from the very beginning, this language was never given any official status. And that's okay, because not every language can be given official status, right? But during the Mughal time and during the time of Ranjit Singh, Punjabi was free to flourish. When the British came, they heavily suppressed the language because they were afraid of a rebellion, as I mentioned. And then came 1947, and Punjab was divided into two. one part in India and one in Pakistan. Now, in both of those states, the state of Punjabi and the how it's being handled is starkly different. In Indian Punjab, the language of Punjabi is being given a lot of importance, and it's formally brought forward and been given a status of a proper language and official language. I won't go into much details, but I talked about the Pakistani side in my previous video, where I talk about the intellectual death of Punjabi. Punjabi is still basically facing the same prejudices which are being carried forward. However, the point of these videos, as I mentioned, is that we don't have to pick and choose one language. We can learn all of them and flourish in all of them because all of them hold vast amounts of knowledge, literature, and beauty. So that was the story of the language of Punjabi. And let me know down below in the comments if you want to hear about the origins, about the history of more regional languages. Okay? See you guys next time. Bye.